Well, thank you all for having us. Dennis, thank you very much. So let me go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves. Juergen, do you want to start it off?
Yeah, my pleasure being here. My name is Juergen Bilo. I'm heading the startup organization of Continental. Continental is a big tier one, and we are doing collaboration partnerships with startups, and we also invest into startups.
Okay.
Yep, and I'm Jeff Peters. I'm a partner with Ibex Investors. I manage our $113 million early stage VC fund focused on mobility, where that includes manufacturing, logistics, so how things move, and then how people move. And yeah, I've been doing this for the better part of a decade, all early stage venture. Part of that, PhD, operations research, aerospace engineer. Before that, worked for a defense contractor, bought and sold cars as a kid, so been around mobility pretty much my entire life.
My name is Holly Wu. I manage the North America M&A and venture team for Mercedes-Benz. I think Mercedes probably doesn't need a lot of introduction, but my background in the past has been in finance, banking, M&A, and in portfolio management.
Awesome. So the purpose of the panel is really to understand and have a candid conversation between the OEM perspective, the tier one perspective, the investor perspective, and how they may align and how they sometimes conflict, and how we work together in this world where AI is now accelerating disruption. We went through ADAS, we went through CASE, we went through all these other changes, and now how does AI take a stab at making those changes? So in looking at it, and starting with you, Holly, because you're sort of at the pointy end of the spear with facing the customer. What's the single biggest shift that you're seeing in AI, and how is that changing the way Mercedes or you guys look at mobility and what customers are going to need in the future?
I think that the concept of AI has been around for a very long time. I think in the vehicle, specifically, you would think of autonomous driving as probably the predominant application of transportation, getting people from point to point and using autonomous driving to achieve that end. In addition to that, there's a lot of, let's say, comfort-related features, smart cabins, and that's something that has increasingly, in the last couple of years, gained a larger share of the public's consciousness, because the autonomous driving piece, I think, from 10 years ago, people have been talking about that, and it's taking some time for that to manifest, especially at the level 4 level. We do have technology that is already certified L3, that's on public roads in Nevada as well as California. So you can actually let the car take control, and the liability is actually on the OEM. So that is on a OEM level, I think probably the highest level of risk that we have seen being taken. Obviously, there's the level 4 startups from the Googles of the world, with Waymo and previously Cruise as an example of that. So I think the new generation of how we can further leverage AI can come in kind of two different flavors. If it's in front of the customer, I think there had been a shift toward further reduction of ECUs in the vehicle. And if you think about what smart and dynamic allocation of workloads can do, it can further reduce ECUs over time. If you can allocate your compute resources, you can interpret the data that's coming from the same sensors, maybe for different purposes. And we've seen a lot of companies already starting to do that. I think that is going to be a very clear reduction of costs over time that you can very much easily point to. This is a value proposition. There is ROI behind it. So that's, it's something that people probably have identified in the last few years. I think it's increasingly the case. Now, you could do that with AI, and especially people call agents, but essentially it's the same as using different models to allocate your workloads to improve your efficiency even further.
Okay. And Juergen, being a tier one, you have a lot of safety systems that you deploy from an automotive tier one perspective. I know we discussed earlier on safety, sustainability, scalability, how, as Holly mentioned, taking on the risk on level 3 and 3+ at the OEM level, but how do you look at, that speed that's required or that we tend to see, whether it's China speed or whatever, in the deployment of AI in that, tier one automotive space?
I mean, the speed starts basically with developing the product, right? I mean, when we're talking AI, of course, and talking simulation tools, DevOps, etc., you can do a lot. I mean, you can probably cut the development time by half, or even further. However, you talked about safety. I mean, that we are also having big business in brakes, braking. That's a very critical area, and of course you have an ECU who is our central compute, as Holly said, was driving these safety functions. And qualification of that is, of course, important. And we always fear a little bit when we are talking AI models and et cetera, neural networks, et cetera. We fear the black boxes, behind that. What is really happening, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, qualification is extremely important, especially when it comes to safety. However, also in this qualification part, when you think about how can you qualify a product, how can you make it really safe, also here AI and Gen AI can help tremendously, because you cannot physically or as humans, as test engineers, you cannot go through all these test cases. So you basically, again, use AI, Gen AI also for testing. But of course, safety is first, and we know all what's happening with the Xiaomi car now in China, for example, or here also in the US and somewhere. It's also, there is no tolerance for accidents when it comes to automated driving. It's interesting because when the human is driving, there is probably some tolerance, but when the machine is driving, there is no tolerance.
Yeah. And Jeff, on the VC side, when you're talking to entrepreneurs and you're talking to startups and they're looking at scaling, they're looking at going quick, and then you get into the realities of working with tier ones and OEMs and not to say that the world of automotive is slow and beleaguered, but
I can say it for you.
Okay, that's fine. But how do you sort of balance that to sort of look at that long-term investment or what may take longer to realize?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I've been doing this for the better part of a decade, and one of the biggest learnings, which is also kind of like a big duh, is that there are safety risks with the automakers and the tier ones that they need to consider, and therefore the process of getting a new technology validated, certified on a vehicle can be a long and arduous process where there's many dead bodies when it comes to startups, simply because they couldn't last long enough. And it's unfortunate, but it is for a good reason. So as an investor, we really need to talk to our peers to understand that is this technology something that is truly unique, valuable, kind of an N of one, such that it is worth taking the risk and putting the capital behind it, and it does actually have a prospect or pathway to getting onto a vehicle in the future. So that's where I think the community comes in to help de-risk these ideas. But if you look at the portfolio that I manage, I'd say only, I'm in mobility, right? 20 to 30% actually will go onto a vehicle one day. Where we see a lot of opportunity is you take the perspective of we had connected autonomous, shared electric, the case. A lot of that's already here in some ways. There's Waymos scurrying about the roads in San Francisco, down here, Austin, and China. It's everywhere. There's still a long road to go with all of that. But it's the technology's starting to penetrate. And not only that, automated driving or some sort of safety features are now being mandated on vehicles. Similar to electrification, there's already electric vehicles. They're growing. So where we spend a lot of time is sort of what's the infrastructure that needs to be built to service, to maintain, to repair, and to refuel or recharge these vehicles. And I think that's where you see actually a lot of opportunity for AI, or because you can solve the problem in a kind of unique or more efficient way that you couldn't do previously. And that's an exciting area because you also see those companies grow much more quickly than before because the teams are more efficient and they can add more value more quickly. And similarly with product development, the tools in order to get some of these technologies on the road faster in a safe way is pretty exciting because if you look, the automotive industry moves incredibly slow, maybe for good reason, but we're looking at China and their product life cycles probably less than half of that than the Western world. And I think there's a lot of learnings to be had there. So I also think from a venture perspective, that's a great way because you're selling software into someone who really has an acute pain point. So that's where I'd see a lot of the AI and where kind of we like to invest, where you can see that really fast growth and take kind of these very select risky investments on something that actually has to go on board a vehicle one day.
So around the ecosystem, not to use the ecosystem word for the 50th time, but the ecosystem of the use of the vehicle and the service and support that's required okay. Building on that, how, are there specifics in terms of whether it's like agentic AI, as Satya was mentioning, or that support, or is it infrastructure related? Where are you seeing sort of the requests, the trends going, from an investment perspective that you can bring to the OEMs? Where is the pool of, demand? If there is one, centralized, or it's sort of everywhere?
It's hard to tell. I let other people kind of tell me what trends are happening. I find that as an investor, so somewhat myopic here, if I go out and say, okay, for this next fund, I'm going to invest in these areas, I'm inevitably going to miss some things because I'm not some oracle here that knows what the future holds. So we really have to look at what people are telling us along the way, a very bottoms-up approach, whether that's Juergen or Holly from their perspectives, or just some entrepreneur that has some thesis that really resonates. So I don't want to pontificate too much there because oftentimes there is something truly new and special that can come along that you can goes overlooked if you're just looking at these pockets. And one example, when I started this most recent fund, I said, there's no way in hell that I'm investing in an ADAS sensor company because that is a painful process. I also said, no way am I going to do a battery company. And, I have now in the portfolio an ADAS sensor company and a battery company, and I'm very proud of them. But that's part of, I try to avoid kind of these pockets of demand and just let the ideas kind of come to me, frankly.
Okay. Holly and Juergen, have you seen or has the interaction with startups now leveraging AI or implementing or trying to push AI into the automotive and the tier one space changed? Or is it similar to how we've seen with, past history with the collaboration with startups? It's sometimes a challenge. It's finding the ways to identify the use cases and support the process through what everybody loves within automotive, which is the procurement department. Has that collaboration changed, or do you see it? Do you expect it to change, or?
I don't know if it's significantly changed. However, for us, it's really important. We are looking for companies on one hand side who understands probably automotive to a certain extent. However, we are also looking for companies out of totally different verticals. As we are doing, as a company, we are doing autonomous driving functionality, we are doing interior functionality, displays, but also now services in the interior, and also safety. So for me, it's really important that we are working with startups who are we are working on arm's length with startups and on a high level with startups. So, and it's super important that we bring companies in who really can talk with our subject matter experts on an eye-to-eye level, because otherwise you will not be successful.
Not just on a pure novel technology perspective, but also application of within the vehicle.
Of course. We have certain use cases in which we are looking for. When we want to do side mirror projection for window projection for a car, for advertisement in the window, for example. Yeah, of course we are looking for a laser beam steering company, and we have certain ideas how this could look like. And when they are coming from the consumer angle, that's fine. But when they are then shifting to automotive, we are looking that we get automotive experts into their company or in the board of the company in order somehow to qualify them early for these automotive use cases. We are always use case centric, yeah. And our engineers, of course, they are pretty much on the technical side, yeah. And we, as a startup arm of Continental, we are also looking into the business side, yeah. I mean, we are always looking, you know, into the which kind of entrepreneur do we have on the other side of the table, et cetera, yeah. And how can the company really survive, and can they make that use case happen, what we are looking for?
To your point about has the engagement model changed, I think the engagement model on the hardware side, you know, in general, I think people are moving faster because there's a lot of competition in the industry. And I think it's true in Tier 1 as well as the OEM side. But the speed at which people can produce, meaning productivity-wise, everyone is moving faster, because if you're a software engineer and you're not using AI versus a software engineer that may be the same level of, you know, craftsmanship-wise, the same level as you, then if that person is using AI, then that person is going to be much faster than you. So at this point there is a general acceleration of engagements with startups, but it's also, you know, for the startups to know, by the time your product is coming out, you're competing also with the next generation of Tier 1's products, with other companies' products. So it's important for them to understand, you know, you may be bringing me a very competitive product that demonstrates ROI today, but in order to integrate that over time, you know, the automotive cycle is at least a couple years out, 2-3 years out. Yes, in China, people move a lot faster. But there's a lot of rigorous testing, especially in Europe. The standard is, you know, has to be like very much hardened before you can bring it out on the road. So I would say in general, the speed of engagement has accelerated because everyone is more productive. But, you know, we still need to go through on the hardware side. I think the software side, you can implement it much, much faster, for sure. On the hardware side, there's still going to be somewhat of a gradual improvement in that engagement process.
Yeah, I think on the startup side, I think that's probably where the biggest learning has been. I think this, you know, 10 years ago or so, LiDAR was starting to come out, new advanced imaging radar were coming out. At one point, we were tracking 75 LiDAR companies, maybe 50 radar companies, right? You've seen them all, right? You have too, and maybe invested in some of them as well. But you look at that set of folks trying to innovate in that space, and they had almost zero automotive chops. They didn't know how to interact. They didn't know the timelines. They didn't know that they had what tests they had to meet. They didn't know this perspective of like, okay, you're better than today, but like you're just a technology at this point. You're not a product that we can buy. And you know, maybe it's not as advanced as, you know, where a supplier can be in 3 or 4 years. So you had all this rush of folks into this space that were very naive to automotive. So I think the major learning on the startup community and investor community, for that matter, is, you know, really focusing on teams that can sort of talk the talk, walk the walk, and understand the timelines and requirements of actually penetrating the automotive industry to actually be deployed on hardware on a vehicle. So we actually see probably less total companies than we saw, you know, 5-6 years ago, but usually they're much less naive.
And let me add probably 2 things. I mean, for us, I mean, as an automotive Tier 1, there was a time it was really hard to really onboard also startups and to, you know, there was a certain arrogance out there, you know. I mean, why should I do
process
automotive?
standardization?
Yeah? Why should I? And that really changed, and I think it's now also understood that we, as if it's an OEM or if it's a tier one, that we can bring a lot of things to the table. Yeah, I mean, we have market access, we have technology access, we have subject matter experts, we understand the use cases, et cetera, et cetera. So as earlier startups comes to us, or we are working with a startup together on a specific use case, yeah, as faster they can implement their solution. And I think I don't know if you fully understood the impact today. The combination out of the software-defined vehicle, which we are talking probably already 10 years, right? I mean, it's like ecosystem, yeah? So it's SDV, yeah? But the combination of the SDV combined with that, what's happening now on the compute as well as the Gen AI on the AI side, that is probably a huge thing. And in the next years, I mean, we will see a massive impact. And if it's on the application side, yeah, where you basically, I mean, you divide the hardware from the software, and so development cycles, especially on the software side, will massively be shorter in the future. And also on the development side, yeah. And we learned that also from our colleagues in China, yeah.
You opened up a follow-up, but I'm going to, given time, I'm going to skip that one, given the recent news of another OEM. And as Satya mentioned earlier, culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But if we're open for questions from the audience, you've got a depth of experience across the entire value chain.
Could anyone talk about AI as it's being used for battery management systems?
For what?
Battery management systems.
Okay, so who is the BMS?
Yeah, I can take a stab. So
He may have a company that he invested in.
Yeah, have I got a company for you? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, BMS or battery management systems software that would sit onto a cell or a pack to better manage that, so you could charge faster, you know, extend the longevity of the pack, et cetera. Tremendously important. I'd say it's fairly commoditized. I mean, everybody can do it. Maybe you could do it marginally better than someone else, but again, like 3 years down the road, are you still going to be best? I'd say from a purely investment perspective, it's very hard to pick a winner there. Probably the OEMs can do the best job anyways because they have the availability of all that data. So we've actually avoided the BMS space specifically, but we do have an investment we do have an investment that uses AI to optimize different electrolytes within a battery, and actually, which is a very similar type of technology. But then we actually use that recipe to contract manufacture the cells. And we actually have our own product doing that, but I'd say the value that we're creating isn't in the BMS or the management itself, it's actually using it to create higher performing or kind of custom bespoke batteries for our OEMs.
We have one here, and then
Could you speak about LiDAR? It looks very promising, but it's not being widely adopted. I know Mercedes just announced it only in the smart car, like who cares? So what's the broad strategy about LiDAR, and when will we see it, and who are the leaders in this technology?
I think may be invisible to a lot of customers, but all of our cars, more or less, have LiDARs on them. Maybe they are, especially with the cars with ADAS packages. You know, for many, many years, it's been on the vehicle, and specifically on the Mercedes, it's kind of like right behind the logo in front of the vehicle, there's a LiDAR that has been in there for a very long time. And obviously, LiDARs could get better over time. Maybe you're getting LiDARs that are more accurate from a distance perspective. Now you can see 200 meters out instead of previously 50 or 100, something like that. But that has been principally something that we have believed in for a long time as a safety redundancy, if you're asking about kind of the camera only versus the LiDAR question.
Well, I was thinking about local company, it was Luminar. They have 400 meters, but Nobody's talking.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it.
I mean, of course, still a LiDAR is an extremely expensive sensor, right? And Jeff mentioned that. I remember that time we talked. You were still at Autotech Ventures, and we are invested in Autotech Ventures. So, and we made an analysis of LiDAR, right? And it was 70 companies roundabout, and we have been also invested in several companies, LiDAR companies. Two of them went bankrupt, so it was gone out of our portfolio, and we. I mean, it's an extremely expensive sensor, and still the volume by today is relatively low. I mean, you have a Mercedes S-Class with LiDARs and probably somehow E-Class, but when you C segment, B segment, so let's see, and of course there are people out there who are saying, you know, with a good radar and a super camera and also AI, you know, we just visited a company here in San Francisco who is doing night vision just based on software, and it was super impressive to see that, how they do that. So the question is, you know, do they get cheaper? Probably also software-wise, can radar and a camera really see the same thing like a LiDAR, yeah. But
And Volvo's launching 2 vehicles, I believe, or they have on the road, the X90 and...
I have sorry, hi. I have the mic so I can ask the question. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So just curious, right, you know, I see a lot of innovation coming from China, right? You know, my LinkedIn is, you know, buzzing with BYD's innovation, parallel parking, you know, amazing technology, right? And I don't see much from US and Europe. Why is that? You know, I see, you know, it's a tier 1 investor OEM, right? You know, I would like to get your perspective. When can we see? Is it all, you know, a lot of, you know, over-exaggeration, or is it real? You know, and when can we see that coming from US and Europe?
My question tags is, can I just add my question?
Sure.
I don't have the,
And
now I do also
we'll have to cut it because I've got...
So could you also add India to that? And given the geopolitics, everything happening, are you looking at, especially the tier 1 and the OE level, are you looking at any innovation in mobility in India?
Wow.
I don't know.
All right.
Should I?
I'll remove me. I focus mostly on the U.S. because I'm in the U.S. and I don't know this marketplace. I'm not going to invest in China for geopolitical reasons, so I can't comment on that. I'm limited in that regard. And I'm naive to other geographies, so it's primarily U.S. and Europe.
Maybe as a general observation, I also focus on the U.S. and North America market, but to your point, to both of your point, China has a supply chain that is fundamentally tied to the most upstream. If you're looking at, you know, battery technology that Neil was alluding to, much of that capability, you can prototype and iterate much faster in a market that's like that. In US and Europe, I think we have been kind of, there's an innovator's dilemma because, you know, in the last 100 years before EV kind of became the front and center, people are very much, in some ways, adamant about their position. And I think it's really Tesla who started to bring to the forefront not only EV technology, but also a vehicle that is fundamentally connected, that can get better over time. I think the European and US OEMs have not been as quickly as the Chinese OEMs in just seeing, okay, there is a leader, and let's just replicate what they can do, but do it in a much faster way.
I mean,
You have 5 seconds, Juergen.
Yeah.
I mean, we have thousands of engineers in India, so we are working with India very close, yeah, and also in China, so India is clearly on the map for us. That's clearly we have a very, very important development center, and I think 3,000 people plus in India. Helping us to develop the products. So that's clear. And China, I mean, China's speed, it also, I mean, it's a totally different level also of risk-taking in China, especially for the local Chinese OEMs. The local Chinese OEMs, they're pushing the technology within the country heavily with startups. I mean, when you see startups like Momenta or Horizon Robotics 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 300 people today, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 people already in the car, et cetera, et cetera. And also what we should not underestimate, the access to data in China. So there is absolutely no fear to give all the data away. You know, people provide all the data from what they do. It's a totally different play. It's a totally different level there. And this data basically feeds the fast development of AI, and with this feeds the use cases, and that what we see as products in China. Yeah, I mean, robo-taxis, we see that here with the Waymo, fantastic. Yeah, but there it's again, I mean, the scaling is a difference.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, thank you to our 3 panelists, and we'll be around if you have further questions or want to have a chat.
Yeah, please contact us. I mean, we are looking for great startups. Yeah.